I'm calling the City Council Urban Affairs and Housing Committee meeting to order. It is Monday, July 17th. We have one item on our agenda. Order number 23, 108-721F, proposed ordinance amendments to Chapter 650 zoning relative to certain provisions concerning mixed use and affordable housing. So everybody has a new copy that should include changes that we went through at the last two meetings that we had. I had sent an email to our secretary. Unfortunately, she was not in the office and did not send it. So you all have a printed copy of a two-page document that starts out with D, external materials and appearance. We'll get to that a little further on in the discussion. So I hope everybody had a chance to go through this, compare it to the originals, compare it to what we went with. I know I have heard of one thing that I missed. Otherwise, Councilor Doucette?
Yeah, one piece you missed is material designs to imitate faux brick are not permitted.
I'm sorry?
I would like to see, in the bottom of the page of the new document.
How about if we wait to get to that piece?
Okay, I brought that up in the last meeting, so that's why I didn't see it change. But I'll bring it up later.
All right, so the document that has, I think, 6 pages to it. I know, and I forgot where you said, Councilor Ossing, that I had left out a word. So if you can remind me.
Madam Chair, page 3, bottom of the page, item or letter K. Guarantee of performance, no final certificate of occupancy.
I'm sorry, the final, and which one?
Item K, bottom of page 3.
Yep.
Sentence starts with no certificate. It should read no final certificate.
Okay, I knew there was a word final going in there somewhere. All right, so that will be an addition when this gets put back together. I would like to go through a couple of things. After talking to our secretary, she did encourage me to go back and switch hotels to no. I think if nothing else, we should at least delete the hotels with conference facilities and leave the hotels with the description of 41 that's there, which could then become boutique hotels if we decide to at a later date. If we all agree on deleting both types of hotels, then there is additional language in the code that needs to be also deleted. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you, Madam Chair. After conversations with other councilors, while I thought not having hotels in the village district, if we put it as a special permit, at least we get a chance to see it and see what they're trying to do before it comes up, instead of being a simple yes or no.
So you would rather keep both of them with special permit, or just keep hotels?
Yes. Okay.
Both?
Yes, keep both as a special permit, because that way at least there's some degree, we still have some degree of control to see what's going on.
We do. I would agree. I guess my concern is more, I don't think we're ever going to get a conference, but that doesn't mean we might not.
Right. It keeps it open without saying it's freely available.
Okay. Councilor Wagner, did you have a comment or?
Oh, I do agree. I didn't raise my hand, but I do agree with that.
Councilor Ossing?
No, I agree with Councilor Doucette. I think keeping the option for hotels, conference centers, just based on parking, it's never going to really work downtown. You're never going to get a hotel that big, but I think the boutique or smaller hotels would really be beneficial downtown if a developer comes in and wants to put one of them in. They wouldn't require a lot of parking. They're usually pretty small just based on the boutique nature of them. So I think Councilor Doucette's correct. We should keep it as a special permit and let us kind of evaluate them as they come before the council. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilor Navin?
Thanks. I agree that we should leave it open for boutique hotels, but so just in that vein, so we would be keeping hotels or moving hotels to special permit, and then there's hotels with conference facilities we would keep as a no?
I got the impression Councilor Doucette was suggesting both be
Both.
special permit.
But
And
if,
again, if we don't have the space and there's no parking, I would think that we probably would not really ever approve a hotel
Right.
with conference facilities.
well, I mean, that was kind of my thought. So if do we want to leave the door open if we're going to have those constraint issues and then somebody comes with a project that we get pigeonholed into with a special permit?
I kind of am with you. Councilor Doucette?
Thank you very much. I see this as more of a long arc play, not something that would be something immediate, but having a special permit. You know, if you're going to put in a boutique hotel down here, you probably have to be aware that you need to address your own parking. So I'll leave it, you know, the infamous, you know, parking garage on Rollins for, let's say, a boutique hotel at the Walker Building, you know, hypothetically. Whoever would walk in and do that would also have to address the parking needs in parallel. So, but I don't want to dismiss it outright, but just keep it as an option.
Councilor Navin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree. I think we're both in agreement on boutique hotels. I think that my concern is on the other piece for the hotels with conference facilities. If that's something, no matter what we see, is something that's going to be concerning long-term due to parking and constraints, I think we can still say special permit for boutique hotels. And let's not even get into the conversation about having a conference center in the district.
So, Madam Chair?
Councilor Doucette?
Thank you. So boutique, I mean, you and I both know what a boutique hotel is.
Right.
If you have a boutique hotel with a couple of conference rooms, is that going to be excluded from the second option? And that's my concern. It's not, I'm not talking about a conference room, like, you know, conference area such as a convention center, but just, you know, yeah, it's a boutique hotel with a couple of conference rooms. I don't want it to be miscategorized and become a royal pain. So that's
No.
why I consider both to be options.
To me, a boutique hotel is just a hotel with rooms. A
Exactly.
hotel with conference facilities is like what's on Felton Street, what's on, I think all of our hotels within the city have conference rooms. And then we have the Best Western that has the whole big convention center. But you can have a conference at any hotel. I don't see one downtown being one we would want. But we need,
I'll leave it to the
agree.
vote of the committee if that's the case.
all right, I saw Councilor Lander's hand.
My question is, a boutique would require a special permit.
I think we're,
Mike?
I think we would just leave it as hotels and not describe it as specifically boutique. If you go to page 2, that's where really the language of 41, which is beside the name hotels, is described, and it just says hotels. It doesn't say how big they are. There's no limitation on size of them, so I think if one was downtown, we would want it to be relatively small, and that boutique name would probably fit.
Well, if you had the title there, boutique hotel, it might attract the developer, though.
It
And
might.
see, I could see, rather than the Walker Building, I could see the Victorian building there. That would be a nice 24-room boutique hotel.
Councilor Oram?
Thank you. I concur with Councilor Doucette, and I would suggest leaving it at hotel. I think we get too involved with definitions if we say boutique. I agree with Councilor Landers. I was just going to mention, we want to make the areas downtown attractive, so if someone's designing mixed use for apartments and says, you know, if we can't get that, maybe we can try a smaller hotel. I'll explain it that way. So I don't see a problem with, because it's under special permit, that it just say hotels, special permit. And I think it keeps the concept of a dynamic downtown. I was out in Springfield. They have a very large hotel in their downtown area and conference centers. And, you know, we look at Main Street, but we got Granger behind us as well. So you never know. There might be enough parking. That would be my issue when it goes through a special permit, where you're going to put the cars. But outside of that, I think it could make Marlborough's downtown dynamic. So I would suggest and concur with Councilor Doucette. Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to leave consensus that both of the hotels will go back to being special permit. On page 2, the strikeout for 650-1841 will go away, and that will not be on here at all because we're not really changing that language. I also see that the solicitor is in the room, and if he would like to come in the well, he's certainly welcome, and if people have questions. So while we're on page 2, then the other thing that's added, I believe that's new, is the mixed-use development in the table of uses has a 42 beside it. So the language highlighted in yellow is the current language of mixed-use development. I'm suggesting that we remove the word shall not and make it shall be subject to special permit provisions for multifamily uses. Otherwise, it becomes confusing with all the other places where we have in the code that we do want both mixed use and multifamily residential as special permit. And it was just one of those areas that sort of got lost. Is everybody okay with that and understand? All right, then I think we get to page 4, unless there's anything else that anybody caught that I forgot or missed or... All right, so on page 4 in red, this is the language that was brought up at our meeting last week where Councilor Doucette had wanted language that was in one of the design review pages, but unfortunately it only had part of the language. So this has both that number 1 that he read, where he wanted materials designed to imitate brick are not permitted, along with the other descriptions that are there. So what are on the table, and Mr. Solicitor, did you get a copy of what I sent out? Unfortunately, this didn't get sent out for people to have a chance to review. I sent it today with a note. Our secretary had reached out to Larry Reeves, who was an architect in the city of Marlborough. He was involved in the redesign of the Lost Shoe building, of the original Row building, Eon Main. He also did the condos that are built on Ash Street. So he gave her permission to give me his phone number. I reached out and talked to him. So what he is suggesting is the language that's on the 2-page paper that was given to everybody today. And to Councilor Doucette's point, he said that the materials designate to imitate brick are not permitted is a very important piece to keep. But, he actually didn't, there is something called faux brick. I think that Karen sent everybody the information that I found when I just did a search, the architectural review that described multiple kinds of brick that aren't standard bricks. And that he really stressed that for the ground floor of buildings, that they really need to be real brick material. When you go higher up, and that's what he had said in the original design of the Row building, that his plan was to use the precast concrete panels. It looks like brick, and they are very standard across the industry. And he guesses will probably be what is used at the Granger Boulevard building, but we're not sure. And it is language that is really already there. It does say in the current language that the predominant wall materials are red brick, stone, or precast concrete panels. So the precast concrete panels can look like brick. They can also look like stone. So his suggestion, and I will read this, is that predominant wall materials adding in for all ground floors shall be brick. And he said you could get rid of the descriptor red, and instead, to him, traditional New England colors, because there's brown brick that works, and there's red brick, and there's paler pink brick, but that there's a standard of traditional New England colors and character, and stone, period. Wood siding may be used where the structures are adjacent to residential districts where the intent is to blend the structure more into the existing neighborhood. And then adding in new, thin brick veneer, precast concrete panel finished to look like brick or stone. Masonry brick panels and flex brick can be used on upper floors. Glass fiber reinforced concrete, I guess all of that should be capital, my apologies. In parentheses, GFRC panels can be used for curtain wall, non-load bearing exterior cladding. If painted or coated, a non-metallic finish is to be used, and all of the rest of that remains as it is. Then, and keeping the materials designed to imitate brick, for example, faux brick are not permitted. And then changing around so that the standards for all, adding in the word all, acceptable masonry construction are as follows. Acceptable masonry construction for bricks will be standard fired clay brick units bonded together with mortar. Acceptable applications include building components, and then making that all one paragraph instead of the separateness that's there, so that it would be bricks should be sound, hard, well burnt with uniform color, shape, and size. The brick should be compact, homogeneous, free from holes, cracks, flaws, air bubbles, spalls, and stone lumps, and frog bricks shall be laid with the frogs pointing upwards. And then making a new B, mortar specification shall comply with the relative. And when I looked it up to find out what ASTM, it's now called ASTM International. It used to be the American Society for Testing and Materials, but nowhere in anything that I found does it actually say that anymore. It's just ASTM International Standards. And then a new C, the properties of all other masonry units shall comply with the requirements of relevant ASTM International Standards. These include concrete masonry, stone masonry, and composite masonry. And I did put in a, if it was approved, how it would read, because it is sometimes kind of hard to read through all the strikeouts. So, comments, questions, because I don't know that I can answer them, but comments, Councilor Doucette.
Okay, with the new wording, they're talking about thin brick veneer, precast concrete panels, unlike faux brick, so that's fine. Actually, I'm willing to live with this wording and description. It addresses the concerns I brought up in the last meeting.
Okay,
So
and
this is
he
good.
certainly agreed that there is a whole lot of material out there that is being used across the country that is, it's not imitation brick, but it's made to imitate the look of brick. So I
The
guess
thin-
that's
so
the
the-
difference between the faux brick. It really, it's plastic.
Right, well, that and basically stucco, you know. But I think the thin brick veneer, which is actually the very thin brick plants, that's, I wanted to make sure that that was allowed, and I think calling that one out in here, because that's becoming a common practice.
Yes.
In doing outside, so, you know, I think that this clears it up, so I'm fine with that.
Okay, and this has got to go out to the public, so we may be hearing from other people that there are other kinds of descriptors, so long as we're all happy with it. I will add that into what's on page 4. Councilor Orm, did I see a hand?
Yeah, just when I saw section 1, curious, the word flex brick and GFRC, glass fiber reinforced concrete, are those industry names or are those company names?
Flex brick is actually a, it has the little R and a circle, which I
So
tried
it's
to
a
figure out. It
registered-
is registered, and it is specific. GFRC is just a name. Multiple people make the panels. It's not a one brand, one company. It's a product.
So because they're generic, could we put or approved equal? Just so we're not designated only two,
I
but
don't know if there's anything that's considered equal. That is what it's called, glass fiber reinforced concrete panels.
yeah, I'm just thinking if something else comes on the market and it's equivalent. I was thinking the word or approved equivalent, and I would ask our attorney if that would keep us away from designating certain type of products.
Through the chair, I think that's one thing I had made the same note also about flex brick. We may want to do something like or equivalent or a similar product, something like that, so we're not so specific to one product that may change names itself or, you know, be bought and sold, basically.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I will leave that up to you to add in the legalese that we need. I know all of those are currently the information that I found on what replaces brick, so they're current. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just throwing this out, but does anyone know what a frogged brick is?
Anybody know what is?
You haven't yet? No one looked it up yet?
I have a picture of it if you want to see.
Okay.
I had to look up frog.
Is it a decorative,
I
brick
had to
or
look
is
up
it
what
an
frogs
angled
were
brick? is
too.
my
It's like,
question.
what is this? So, yeah.
I'll
All
look
right,
it
so
up later,
everybody's
don't
okay
worry.
with this, so we can continue on to, I think we are really at page 5 and heights of structures. And we're kind of beginning our discussion with this. So this is open for input from anybody who has suggestions, changes, agrees with what's here. Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just kind of in line with what I was saying at our last meeting, in my opinion, you know, I think 5, when we saw in our last experience and going around with the development, I think 5 was a little too much. I'd be comfortable putting something, if it's, you know, per the suggestions that have been made by the solicitor, putting stories and feet in. Something with 4 stories and 56 feet, I think is something that I would be comfortable with for future projects downtown. I would also be willing to support some flexibility for roof decks, and I don't know if you want to have these conversations separately or not, but if there was a, you know, if it was to be decided by special permit that some flexibility could be given above the 4 stories for an outdoor space, I would be willing to be flexible on that. I think that is an amenity that other people would enjoy having, and if there is space on the roof besides for, you know, electric and HVAC equipment, I think that would be a nice touch to be able to, you know, help people out. So,
And I think everybody got sent the language of Marlborough Village District, where this is taken from. This is section F in there. So, and then I believe it's also delineated in the table of heights that is a multi-descriptive, so whatever we agree with has got to get put in there anyway. So maximum or minimum heights shall be 35 feet. You'd rather have it be stories rather than feet?
I'm sorry? I was just saying both. I mean, we can, if we were told, if we've got the number here that it's 14 feet per story, we could belt and suspenders it. I don't know that is it a problem to write 4 stories and or 56 feet?
I don't think so. Is that
Yeah, that works.
workable
yeah.
to you? So minimum height shall be 35 feet or 4 stories? Is that,
Well,
would it work? Do the math.
35 is 2.5 stories.
Okay, well, we're talking minimum, so
Right,
I
so
think
that's a
to get
minimum of 2.5 stories. I'll have to rely on the building commissioner to tell me what that looks like.
And I don't know, because, again, I think this was something that our secretary had looked up and found that a story is 14 feet. I don't know that it's anywhere in the code. The code on the table of heights has both feet and stories, so it's a little confusing, so I don't know if we can,
Can we say
Put
4
that in there
stories
somewhere?
totaling no more than 56 feet in height?
You could, so Madam Chair, that there's this definition in the whole zoning chapter for story, and it's a lengthy definition, but it says in a case where a building is not divided into stories, a story will be 15 feet in height. So that may bring you to 60, yeah.
so it says 15 versus the 14 that I was told. Okay, so it is in the code that it does say if it's not specified?
Yes, unless it's somewhere else that, particularly the village, that's kind of the general definition here.
Okay. So minimum height shall be 35 feet. So do we really need the stories, or do we just want to say 35 feet? You would rather have the stories?
I guess I don't know enough about the building process where if someone were able to get creative with the number of feet, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have 4 stories of residential and commercial space.
So if our code has 15, then if we do the math of a story
60
being
feet.
15 feet, so 2.5 stories would be 30, 40, would be 40.
Be 37.5 at that math.
So change 37 to be actually what?
What does, I mean, it's a half a story
Reference?
anyway, so I think 35 is still fine.
Okay,
So yeah, I think that number for minimum is still fine, a nice
all right,
thing.
and 2.5 stories
Yeah.
with and up to something, up to,
4 stories
or a maximum?
or a
Do you want
maximum
minimum?
of
A minimum
60
of,
feet,
and a maximum?
64.
60?
60 feet, if it's 15.
4 stories at 14?
At 15, according to our code,
Okay, then that would be
And a maximum of how many feet?
60.
60, if we're going on that math, yeah.
I'm hearing voices all across here. So a
Sorry.
maximum of 60 feet, or how many stories? 4 stories. Okay, thank you.
One thing I'd suggest, and this could be during this process or beyond, is it may be beneficial to have feedback from the building commissioner about how, the kind of applications they're seeing and how that office is going to go and interpret these things, yeah.
And then the current language in there is by grant of a special permit, maximum building height, including building areas within 50 feet of a residential district boundary, may be increased to 7 stories and up to 85 feet. So everything will now be special permit, but I personally want to bring it back down and want to strike that whole sentence. But Councilor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think the reason for that sentence is because across the street, we're next to the residential, which are the streets that are far above the city, you know, where the height is not as pronounced, but whatever the hills are, whatever the streets are, Devons and stuff like that. Because that's what came out with Eon Main, is the distance of them to Eon Main became an issue. So I think.
Right, it was very specifically added at the request of the developer of Eon Main because of what they wanted for that project. And my hope would be Eon Main never happens, and the next person coming in for that space meets the code that we have of 60 feet. I don't think anything needs to be 85 feet high downtown, but that's me personally.
So the other question I had, as far as the roof deck goes, if the roof deck is considered to be one of the floors, then the 4th floor becomes the 3rd floor because you've got a roof deck. And that's common space. The deck is common space. You don't have apartment units on the roof deck floor because it's the roof deck floor. So I would like to see the height restriction could be increased by special permit for a roof deck, and only for a roof deck. So I'd like to see that striking removed. This is on page 6 of the comments, at the end of item 2.
Right, how about if we stick with the heights
Okay.
first and then go to the next step?
Okay, no, well, we were talking about roof decks before, so I didn't want it to get lost.
Yeah, no, none of this that we've mentioned so far talks about roof decks. It talks about
No, we were talking. we
roof
just-
mounted mechanical, but that's, to me, is different.
Okay,
I don't think those are included on any roof, any heights. They're just up there. And they can be gigantic or they can be smaller, but they have to be, I think they have to be screened. So is everybody okay with the minimum height shall be 35 feet or 2.5 stories and a maximum of 60 feet or 4 stories? And then I guess the question is really, are we striking the ability to go up to 85 feet? Counselor Navin?
So I would, you know, and sympathetic to Councilor Doucette's point, as I was mentioning earlier, when we get to that point, I think I would be comfortable having that conversation, because I think that's true. But yeah, I think reducing those maximums and getting rid of them makes sense in that regard. However, I do think that when we get to this point, we should have a conversation about some flexibility to have a roof deck in part, you know, or as part of the structure, where there are also HVAC equipment and other things where you can divide a roof in pieces, and that should not.
All right, so the current language on roof decks is roof decks providing recreation and amenity areas for residents and businesses on the roof above the top stories shall be encouraged in the Marlborough Village District. Roof decks may include lots of different stuff. The portions of a building designed as a roof deck shall be subject to maximum height restrictions. And then striking the as may be increased by special permit. It's everything special permit, so I don't see the, but maybe we need to add that back in so that under a special permit, they could actually go higher than 60 feet for a roof deck?
That's what I was going to suggest.
Everybody's not going to want a roof deck.
Right, and so we can reduce the maximum height, right? So the maximum height was increased to, you know, to placate Eon Maine so they could build what they wanted. If we are saying that across the board, the district allows 60 feet of maximum height, we could just bring it back down to a little bit higher than that to accommodate for that particular instance, and then leave the roof deck language, and I think that accomplishes kind of what we were talking about.
With a special permit.
So if we change the as may to but may be increased by special permit, does that work as language, Mr. Solicitor, everybody else?
I guess.
So it still allows us to say, okay, you want a roof deck, you want to go higher, how high are you going?
But I would just, yeah, but I would just say, even with that language giving us the flexibility, do we still want a hard cap? Because you know what I mean? We can now decrease it, not to make this more complicated than it needs to be, right? To say, okay, it's no longer 7 stories, say it's 5 stories with the corresponding feet is your max, and then still for that purpose, and then give that the special permit language. So the special permit would be allowed to go up to. The president's about to tell me I didn't make it simple enough.
Councilor Ossing, you have a
All right,
suggestion?
So now, I want to make sure I understand. The minimum isn't changing, 35 feet. We're tentatively agreeing on a maximum of 4 stories, right?
Yeah, 60.
So now the question, if you want a roof deck on top of it, now to me, it's still going to be a story. It's now bigger now. So again, get back to what do you want downtown? If you want a roof deck, is it 3 stories with a roof deck or 4 stories then a roof deck? What do you want? All right, because that's key. You know, 4 stories plus a roof deck is bigger. It's not the 6 stories plus the roof deck. But what do you want? And I'm trying to keep notes here as well. So I heard tentatively maximum 4 stories, parentheses 60 feet. All right. How many?
64 is, 4 times 14 is 64.
4 times 14 is 56, but it's 4
We're
times
using 15.
15, which is 60.
50.
Yeah, because I think the solicitor said
4 times
15 is in the
15
code.
is 70.
Nope.
4 times 15 is 70, 4 times 14 is
It's
60.
No,
not
it's
good when the
60.
city
4
council
times
does
15,
math on
3
the
times 15 is 30, 30 twice is 60.
Yeah.
You confused me on this, because 14 would have been,
14 is 56.
yes, okay.
All right. 15 is 60 feet.
There we go, thank you.
Going
Thanks
with-
for the correction, I stand
That's
corrected.
okay, no, that's why we're working all this out here.
But I like the maximum height, though, that
Right,
spells
that's
it
why,
out.
that's why I want to make sure, it's not a maximum height, you're going to tell me I can put something on top of the maximum height. I mean,
Right,
that's where
and-
my mind is at.
And I guess that's why, to me, it would depend on where it is in the Marlborough Village District and what was around it, whether I want to then allow them to go higher or whether I want to say you have to do minimum height restrictions.
Again, if I may, Madam Chair, what do you want downtown? If you want 4-story buildings downtown, look down there now, say it. It's not hard. That's it. It's going to help you with parking. It's going to help you with everything that you've got issues with. If you're now gonna say I want 4 stories plus something on top of it, now I'm back to 57 Main Street again, all right? So what do you want, all right? And if you make it hard, we can't, if you just give them simple directions, it's gonna be a 4-story building, done. If you want a rooftop, then say so, but it'll be a bigger building, so just recognize that, that's all.
Councilor Landers?
I think as long as we have a special permit that you could go higher, I think the only reason I would put a maximum on there is for fire protection. The fire chief had discouraged anything over 4 or 5 stories. We have 5 stories on Main Street now, except that you can get to it from Main Street. And I assume you're afraid of shadows. That's the trouble they have in Boston oftentimes by the aquarium there. You know, you go too high, you have shadows, and some people will never see sun the rest of their life, you know? But I think you gotta have that option in there because, you know, land is at a premium in Marlborough. And we always forget, for these developers, all right, to build something that they can make money on and that investors will invest in, you know, they're not gonna get away with 24 units. They might need 48 units. Well, if the lot is only a certain size, you gotta go up. So I think, Madam Chair, if a special permit down the future here would give a city council an option, I don't know, I'm not saying I want 10 stories, but maybe 6 or 7 stories. You gotta have an out that a developer can come in and make money on this. It's the only reason they come in.
Yeah, and I guess I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to disagree with it, and I think the sense of the committee is if we put the height limit on there, then the only thing we're going to allow above that is a roof deck, which is not livable space. It's only entertainment space. So they're not going to be able to go any higher with a special permit. They need to have a special permit, but we're going to put minimum and maximum. The question now becomes...
What's the purpose of the maximum again? I don't understand what the purpose...
Maximum is 60 feet or 4 stories.
Is that because of fire or...
No, it's because I think that's what we want as a council.
Well, I don't see that in too many towns or cities.
I think what we did at Eon Main in hindsight was wrong, and I'm trying to correct it.
If you ever have anything developed, that's what you're gonna have to go again.
I would maybe disagree.
Well, that runs out in January, so it probably won't happen, but...
So our real issue at this point is, do we want to let a roof deck be higher than our maximum? And I see Councilor Dumas.
Just for a point of information, the 28 South Bolton Street project is a 5-story building with 36 residential. So that means that it's 1 floor down as mixed use and then 4 stories, I would assume, residential.
And it's because it's under the current code. So it would be...
Which I respect. So I'm just putting that in perspective. So now if you do maximum 4 stories, first floor would be commercial, the top would be residential. So if this is 36 residential units, so now if you even drop it down by 12, now we're talking 24 units with each building. So if we have 5 of these on Main Street, it'd be 125 parking spots based upon... So I'm just trying to put things in the bigger picture. So if you do 4 stories, we have to, all those are going to be residential, at least 3 stories, so now I have to provide parking for all of those. So it depends on how big the buildings are, we have to accommodate some type of parking. And if parking is limited, then they're not going to be parking.
We're limiting the parking, and I guess if people don't want to have a mixed use, they can certainly just do an all-residential building and be able to maximize their number of apartments.
Which would mean more parking for the people that are living there.
Right.
It's just a rabbit hole, so I just want to make sure that we're aware of what we've already approved based upon, we all seem to like that project.
Yep.
And that's 5 stories.
Eon Main's been
36.
approved, and we know what the deadline on that is, so we'll see what happens. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So I just want to get clarification because I was hearing some crosstalk. So would the roof deck be considered above the 60-foot? Okay, just as long as that's I want to make sure that was clear, just because there wasn't things going
Well,
back
the
and forth.
current language says the portions of a building designed as a roof deck shall be subject to maximum height restrictions as may be increased by special permit.
Which is fine, yes, and I'm fine with
So, but that was there,
that. That's a way out.
it's a way out, but also there are potentially, with the language that's here, there were potentially site plan only buildings. Eon Main became a special permit because of other issues.
Well, I
So
thought
know we're-
anything mixed use downstairs is still going to require a special permit anyway, right?
I'm sorry?
Isn't all mixed use downtown in the village district going to be special permit now?
Yes.
So they're going to come to us anyway.
So if we keep the as may be increased by special permit in there, I don't like the way that reads. So to me, but may be increased by special permit, or but may be increased in the special permit. Solicitor, do you have?
Madam Chair, I was going to suggest that, right now if we're at the table of, this table, the lot area and the yards and the height.
Yep.
That has a footnote right now to go, up to 7 stories. If the committee's going to do away with that footnote, but if we are going to let folks exceed 60 feet by adding a rooftop deck, we might use that footnote to come out and just say that, that you can go over 60 feet with a special permit just for a rooftop deck. That might be a spot to do that if the committee is inclined.
Yeah, and to me, a rooftop deck, I'm not sure how you would define how high it is, because it's just going to be flat roof with stuff on it. There's not going to be any livable space with another roof on it. There may be some canopies, but it's not going to have a roof, a real roof.
In section 2, this is on page 6, it says, roof decks may include open space areas for sitting in gardens, open air areas covered by permanent roofs, flat or soaked, indoor areas for social gathering, meetings, common kitchens, restrooms, and storage, spaces for mechanical equipment, enclosures for elevators and stairs. So it is an enclosed space, it is a common enclosed space, effectively a clubhouse type of effect, but there's no housing there. It's just a shared space.
Right, but it's not like they're going to put a whole roof over the whole thing. They may have
No.
a little kitchen.
Part of it, yeah.
They may, so to me, you're not going to be able to look up and say, if they have those things, yes, they probably would. The roof wouldn't be able to go more than 10 more feet.
Right. We may want to say something about setback away from the edge of the walls so that you don't see it from the, it doesn't look like an additional part of the building, right? It's set
Right.
back, so it's effectively hidden from view from the ground.
And maybe that is just something we look at in the special permit, so we're looking at the design rather than to get too specific in the language.
Okay.
But if it's the portions of a building designed as a roof deck shall be subject to maximum height restrictions, they won't, shall be subject to maximum height restrictions, but may be increased in the special permit. Do we want them or don't we want them? To me, it's like, if we're going to let them do it, then why do we say that they're subject to maximum height restrictions? If we just say the portions of the building designed as a roof deck.
Madam Chair. I
Counts?
think going back to what is it that we want is an important question here. Because is it strictly height? Because if, again, we keep going to the dynamic and what we could bring downtown, the extra, it'd be sort of an extra story. Now, if it's apartments, it's more people, it's more of an impact on downtown, so that's a different discussion, and that's why I think limiting how many stories so that you don't have a 8-story, mammoth building down there. We've got to say, okay, we only want it this height. But the restrictions on a rooftop, it could be really exciting. I mean, it could be a closed-in roof. What if you had it would be a really cool restaurant a lot of people would want to go to if it was almost like an observation deck on top of a building. Or it could be open space with like glass walls and a roof, or it could be meeting space, some kind of community space, or it could be open air, like you said. I mean, there's a lot of, for me, it doesn't change if it's an enclosed space with glass walls and a roof that would have a lot of uses. That to me is just as attractive as an open air place with canopies that are going to be impacted by weather. What changes for me then is the impact, where the building is and what the impact is. Are they going to have live music? That's going to really impact neighbors. Or if it's an area where it's not a problem, that could be good. Is it going to be green space where people can go, sort of like having a park on top of your building? Could have a running track up there. It could have, so quiet that wouldn't bother the neighbors at all. So it's more, for me, it's about the story isn't a problem, the height isn't a problem, it's what it's going to be used for, and why restrict it? There's a lot of really cool things that could go on top of a building.
Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just kind of in conjunction with what I've been hearing from everybody else, when we were talking about the height of the buildings, I was referencing back to some of the images in the design review guidelines for the Marlborough Village District, the edition from 2014. And on page 11, there are a couple of snapshots of buildings on our own Main Street that are pretty much right across the street from us now. And one's an example of a 3-story building. And then there are a couple of 4-story buildings. So when I picture, what Main Street would look like, and I see what we already have, I could very easily see these 4-story buildings that currently exist. One of them that I'm looking at is the one that Welly's is in across the street. I feel like if we were to have that building with a rooftop deck, that would be completely fine. I feel like it would fit in with what we have, and hopefully, like Councillor Wagner was saying, if we don't really restrict what they would be able to put on the rooftop, whether it had an enclosure versus completely open air, I think some really cool things could be done. Thank you.
And I believe when we originally did this, we specifically didn't put restaurants in there, and they're not described as a public restaurant. There's kitchens, but I think the idea was that the tenants of the building would be able to use that. So we're going down a totally different path if we're adding the ability for a public restaurant to be on the roof decks. So do we want to go down that way, or do we want to leave it as is described and figure out how we, I guess the question still remains, do we want the roof deck to be 60 feet, or do we want 60 feet with the ability to have a roof deck in the special permit? Councilor Navin.
I personally think the latter. I think 60 feet with the possibility of a roof deck is what I'm comfortable with. I think going up to 4 stories for the residences, or the residences and the commercial fits. I think everybody's made some good points and how this is right. I mean, I feel like, I don't know how many people, I sat in the back shortly, I think, after the election when I was elected to the council, and I sat in the back and watched Councilor Clancy and Councilor Delano shout back and forth over what's the definition of a story and whatnot. And I feel like we're right back here again. So it is complicated. I think having a maximum height somewhere, but the only reason I say that is because I don't know what someone's going to come in. Can you make a 2-story roof deck with certain glass ceilings and everything else? I don't know. That's the only reason I think it's comfortable. I don't think, to the president's point, or regarding the president's point, I don't think it's another full story, but it is more than 4 stories. So I think keeping the maximum for the building, allowing a roof deck and allowing that to go higher is fine. I think an overall height maximum, do not know how you write that in. I would defer to the solicitor to make sure we don't have something that is a little bit out of bounds. As a belt and suspenders, I think it's helpful. That's where I'm at.
Okay. I'm going to go to Councilor Doucette.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that, it says here that roof decks are actually encouraged in the Marlborough Village District. So I see by having this exception, this is the carrot, this is the incentive to actually encourage them to do it. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to. They're limited to 4 stories. If they want to add something to it, hey, that's good, still requires a special permit, still comes to us. If someone is stupid enough to put up a 3-story glass clubhouse on the top of a 4th-story building, we'll fight that fight when it shows up. Until then, I'm not going to be concerned. I think that provides the initiative and incentive to actually have people thinking about above, top building space and the use of that.
Councilor Oram?
Thank you. And looking at the definition right now, the present definition under H2, I agree with the rooftops, first of all, and I agree with the maximum height at this point being 60 feet. I got my math correct this time. But as it relates to any additional ideas such as rooftops, I think the word, and we, may allow, and that comes under special permit. The only thing I read here, though, is that they talk about, and I know on Main, we had some issues with noise, is the social gathering, common kitchens. Is that another structure on the rooftop, especially the common kitchen? Unless it's like just an outside grill, but again, you gotta be considerate about where that smoke is going. But I would definitely support rooftop ideas. It's a green concept as well, so you could have a green roof, but recreational as well. But I know when we dealt with on Main, we got to the complications of noise, how it would affect the neighbors in the back on Devon Street. So I think we don't state it's allowed by right, but we say may be considered, since I agree we should be doing that under special permit and looking at the details at that time. So as Councilor Navin said, I think that language I would support it, the 60-foot height maximum, and we may consider, however you want to word it legally, rooftop structure of some type.
All right, so is everybody okay with changing the as may be increased by special permit to simply but may be increased by special permit? Because everything's special permit, so this isn't the exception that we'll see a developer. And then although it's not on here, we will need to deal with 650 41, which is the table of lot area, yards, and height structures, and I believe everybody was given a copy of that. But for Marlborough Village District, it does say that the maximum height is, the minimum 35 feet, maximum 6 stories, not to exceed a maximum of 70 feet, so that would be changed to match our numbers. And then there's that little 12, which currently says, within the Marlborough Village District, special permits may allow for an increase in height to 7 stories and up to 85 feet, also provided that the height of any development within 50 feet of a residential district boundary shall be stepped down and shall not exceed 52 feet except where allowed by special permit. So I certainly want to get rid of that up to 7 stories, 85 feet. Within the Marlborough Village District, special permits for roof decks with structures with roofs. Can we have just be one more, whatever we said, 15 feet for a story? Do we even want to go 15 feet?
Madam Chair.
Councilor Ossing.
So those notes, based on, I would not worry about the notes in that table just yet. I would worry about what does the council want to see downtown, and then whatever that is, just then go work on the notes in that attachment for heights, because
okay,
you don't want to be doing them at the same time. Pick what you want. So if it's 4 stories and then they can put a roof deck on with the approval of the council, perfect. And then you just go make that lot table. That's what I'm hearing,
Yeah,
so.
and I think we have consensus for the minimum 35 feet or 2.5 stories and a maximum of 60 feet or 4 stories. And Solicitor, if you could, where does it specify that story's 15? In what part of the code are you?
I was looking at 650-5, so just the general definitions
Oh, okay.
piece.
Can we,
And Madam Chair, just for the record, I was quoting 650-34F2, not H2. I said H2 in mistake. It was F2 that talks about rooftop.
okay, so if that's where we want, then obviously we need to change them in the heights column, and then we need to figure out if we really need number 12. We don't really, it doesn't need to talk about do we even need it to be stepped down if it's within 50 feet of a residential district boundary if we're not going to let them go up to 85 feet? I mean, that was important when we did E on Main, that we did want it stepped down, but there's a huge difference to me in the 85 feet that we were going to allow under a special permit and the 60 feet that we're going to allow still under a special permit. So do we want to strike all the language of 12? Does everybody have a copy of I think everybody got sent one, but I don't know if you brought it or printed it. You want me to read it again? $650, the little special number for Marlborough Village District. It says maximum 6 stories not to exceed a maximum of 70 feet with the number 12 beside it, and 12 says within the Marlborough Village District. Special permits may allow for an increase in height to 7 stories or up to 85 feet. Also provided that the height of any development within 50 feet of a residential district boundary shall be stepped down and shall not exceed 52 feet except where allowed by special permit.
You can delete that.
Councilor Wegg. I'm reading, this is from the table of heights, which is an attachment in the 650 zoning if you go to.
Yeah.
I'm looking up, but I thought that
Madam
Ms.
Chair?
Foley provided a copy for everybody.
She did.
Again, if everybody's agreed with what you just said, 4 stories with a roof deck with council approval, I wouldn't bog this down with fixing the notes on that table. It'll just happen. The solicitor knows what's got to be done. If we're going to sit there and pick it, you can't, the step down doesn't apply because we can't get to 85 feet if 4 stories is what you want now. So again, trying to help move the process along.
Right.
Stay out of that table. The solicitor will help us and make us look really good.
Okay. All right, so then I guess we've got the heights of structures, because that's basically what's there in that particular part of the code, so we need to make sure it matches the table of lot areas, yards, and heights of structures. Then I think the rest of it is having that other additional proviso. Is there anything else that anybody noted that needs to be changed? I think we went through that, but I just want to make sure. I'm missing my page 2 and 3. So the piece of the language that I had sent everybody will be switched for what's in red on page 4. And then I guess the question becomes, if I can get this, should it just get reported out on Monday? And then on a following agenda in August, it will be on there. I could suspend to make sure that to refer to the solicitor to be put in proper form, so we're not trying to rush him to have it in proper form for Monday. It would be on the agenda as coming from the Urban Affairs Committee, or just from the solicitor as language. I'm not sure what, at some point, there has to be a public hearing. It would, and I guess, do we have to refer it back to Urban Affairs, or could it just stay with the council so that it, once the public hearing happened, I know it's got to go to the planning board. Once those two public hearings happened, we can just bring it back up at a city council meeting? Councilor Doucette?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's moving in the right direction. I thought we made a lot of progress tonight, and it really was, there's a lot of back work done. I appreciate the work that the city solicitor and you did in putting this together into this state as far as we got. I would like to see a clean draft with all the discussions we've had tonight before it went to the committee, before it went to the council, okay? Instead of having it go to the council and look at it and say, oh, there might be some tweakings and stuff, because my feeling is when it goes back to the council, it's going back to the council to be advertised, right?
I'm sorry, it goes,
This
well,
has to be advertised, right?
it has to be advertised. It has to
Right.
be the council public hearing and the planning board public
Right,
hearing.
and I
Those two
don't
have
want
to.
it to leave the city, I don't want it to leave Urban Affairs until we have a clean draft ready to be advertised.
Well,
as
but
far as the
I
process.
think that
That's-
would,
That's just me.
my plan would be in the report to have a clean copy. That's what would be referred to the solicitor so that he can put it in proper form on the August meeting. So the August meeting would basically have what I put in the report, which you will see on Thursday of this week. Look at it. If you find anything wrong, it can get changed before it goes to the solicitor. So on the August meeting, we would have a clean copy. And to
So,
me, I don't see a need to refer that back to the committee. If the committee is the one bringing it out,
well, that's just
then-
it, I'm not ready to bring it out yet, so that's just my vote.
But it
okay?
would-
But if you don't
On-
mind, I'd like to finish, okay? If this gets to the city council Monday, okay? And let's just say I see some wording changes I'm not comfortable with, I want to get clarified. I'm not sure what the process is at that point to make those changes officially to what would be then submitted for the August city council meeting, which is why I don't want it to leave committee yet. I just want to, I want us to, if we go to the next, if we have another Urban Affairs meeting next week and review a clean draft and it looks perfect and everyone's willing to vote it out of committee so it can be advertised, I'm perfectly fine with that.
all right, and
I
my
don't want
hope
to see
was
it go
that
to the city council.
tonight's meeting would actually include a vote of Urban Affairs to approve the draft. You have the draft in two pieces, plus what was
That's,
agreed to
I want to see
tonight.
a clean final draft to vote
So
on
you
it.
want another meeting?
Yes.
So, it may.
Counselor,
The council name.
go to Counselor Navin
I
as
just
a
had a
committee
question,
member.
and then maybe when you speak, Mr. President, you can help answer that question. So if we don't report it out at the July meeting, we don't have another meeting again until August. So then it would come out in August. What kind of time clock are we looking here? If this has to get advertised, go to the planning board, they have to hear it, then it has to come back here. I want to make sure this committee's put together, this whole council, almost the whole council, has put together quite a bit of work. I don't want to see us run up against a time clock, so with us being in summer and it being an extra month, I just want to talk about how that will impact.
And that's, I think you've all had copies all along, and you've seen the changes, and I've asked many times to make sure that if there are errors in here or things that I missed, Councilor Ossing caught one. If nobody else has caught anything now, then I'll be the mom. Shame on you for not reading it earlier. Okay. I would love to have a vote tonight of this committee so that on Monday I can report it out.
I understand that what you want, okay? I'm not taking the shame on you because I've been through this process from a professional perspective, and it's more of an issue with me. I want it, because there's a lot of things added tonight that weren't in the prior drafts. okay? I want to see a clean draft from the discussion tonight. That's all I'm looking for, because my concern is, if this goes to the city council, then how do we make changes before it gets advertised? That's why I want to keep it in committee.
All right, we have one person who wants it to remain in committee. Anybody else ready to make a motion? Councilor Navin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I totally, with all due respect, Councilor Doucette, I understand your concerns. I am sure that if there are issues that come up, I think we've talked about most of them here. If you're concerned with how it goes, I think we can make sure that those get addressed before the full body. I am comfortable with where we're at. I have read this document more times than I want to at this point, and certainly gotten turned around enough, but I am comfortable with where we landed on all the main points, with the parking, with the height, with where we're requiring special permits. With that said, I am comfortable making a motion to approve as amended tonight.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion. I will make sure that this document that was sent out, that is missing the pieces, is sent to everybody well before Thursday. Thursday is the, well, it won't even be on the agenda, it will be a report. So you will have plenty of time to read the report, read the document. If there's anything that needs to get changed, then please let me know. I will change it at that point. Otherwise, a report will be given on Monday. Well, first I'll take the vote. If there's agreement, the report would include what would then be under suspension referred to the solicitor to be put in proper form. So it's been moved and seconded to approve the draft with amendments discussed verbally tonight. Is there further discussion by committee? Councilor Ossing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm sympathetic to Councilor Doucette's concern, right? But I hope I'm going to try to alleviate some of that concern, all right? So what Chair Roby has said, she'll put all the changes in. Now, so you're right. You haven't seen what table the height structure looks like for striking notes 12, 13, 14, and 17. You haven't seen what that looks like yet. So I agree. Chair Roby has a lot of work to do between now and Thursday night to get that in a presentable format. So that's so you'll see that on Monday's agenda, which will get referred to the report. You'll see the report. It'll get referred to the solicitor, put in proper format. So that's option. That's attempt number one, to look at what's there. Attempt number two is at the August 21st meeting, the solicitor is going to send back to us. He's probably so good. He's probably got it all ready to go. He's probably going to have it the first week of August. Right? So you'll see it in August, before our August 21st meeting, the solicitor's version in proper format, which would be, if deemed appropriate by this body, the version to be advertised. But if you see something that doesn't look right, as we're doing our homework from Thursday before the 21st of August and the August 21st meeting, that doesn't look correct, you have an opportunity then to say, hey guys, probably don't want to advertise it just yet. We see this, and this mistakes. Let's send it to committee. Urban can look at it. We take it up on September, when's picture night? 13th, 11th, I don't know what it is, 11th?
11th, yes.
And then do. Now, I will remind the councils, it does have to get advertised, all right? So we're on a 90-day clock. We're quickly approaching, though sometimes it doesn't seem very quick, the end of the legislative session, all right? So it's 90 days that we have to act. So we have to have a public hearing. Then the planning board has to have a public hearing. You can kind of do the math on your own and say, okay, if we get it on the 21st and everybody's happy, we schedule the public hearing, won't be in time, we'll make the 11th, it won't make the 11th, so it's going to be the 18th meeting. So then the 18th will start our 90-day clock. So September, October, November, December. So we're right up against it. If we take the 90 days, we shouldn't. We've been through it enough so we know what it looks like. The key's really going to be public input and input from the planning board. And if you find something that looked out of whack, but we're set up to make the changes in due time. But I am sympathetic because there is a lot of talking and hand waving. Some of the stuff's got to get done, but I have faith in, based on what we saw from Chair Roby today from our comments last week, she did a good job. She I think she nailed it with all the comments that this body had for her to change, so she's been working pretty hard at this. So I hope that helps Council Doucette. There is an opportunity, two of them really, when you see the report, and then on August 21st, to kind of look at it, but it doesn't help you, it doesn't hurt you now. You can still take what the Councilor, Chair Roby's put together and go through that right now and make sure there's something that, if you want changed, let her know. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And this will be a very big public document to be advertised, because there's a lot to it. And I thank everybody for indulging as I tried to get everything taken care of. Did I see Councilor Doucette, your hand?
Yes. I understand the work that was put in this, and really, you guys have done an outstanding job putting this together. It's just a question of when we see when we open up the present, we finally see what it looks like at the end. I want to see it in the committee versus at the, council floor. Can they be changed? What I don't want to do, honestly, I don't want to be this in a situation that it then goes back to urban. I want it to come out of urban once. That's my concern. So I know that there's a vote, and I'm going to vote against it, and I hope you guys understand why.
All right, so is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the document sent to you as amended with the 2 pages and the discussion tonight on heights to be reported out Monday's meeting with the suspension to be referred to the solicitor. All those in favor? So 1, 2, 3. All those opposed would be Councilor Doucette. All right, so we are, I think, set. I guess my hope was that this really wouldn't go back to urban, but if there is a sense that it should, if the document gets referred to the, if there's a document on the August agenda in proper form, to me it should just get advertised and referred to the planning board, and it can stay in committee, but we'll get to that when we get everything else taken care of. So there's nothing else on our agenda, unless somebody has comments. Councilor Wagner?
No comments. I was going to motion to adjourn.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are adjourned. I think that clock is right. 8:43. Louder there, so we can.